Welcome, everybody, to Spirituality Adventures. This is a non-judgmental place to explore spirituality, and we're so glad you're here. This is a viewer and listener-supported podcast, so we greatly appreciate your support. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, share, and subscribe to any of the social media content platforms that you're using. And then if you go to our website, spiritualityadventures.com, you can make a one-time donation, or with a monthly subscription, you'll gain access to our bonus content. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in. All right. Welcome, everybody, to Spirituality Adventures. We are excited to have Curt Shelman here with us today. Curt, thanks for joining us on Spirituality Adventures.
It's a pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
Good to see you. This is fun having one of my close friends on the show with us, and particularly one of my cycling friends, right? Those are my favorite friends of all. Yeah. So let's have you tell a little bit of your story and introduce yourself to those who are listening in our audience, where you grew up, a little bit about your background growing up, and then kind of move into your running and cycling career.
Okay. Yeah. Grew up in South Central Kansas, area, Pratt, Kingman County area in South Central Kansas. Very small town. You know, I think our graduating class and we were an enormous graduating class with 36 kids.
Right.
And usually it was 20. So anyway, grew up there, was one of the faster kids in school, all the way through. I mean, from when I was real little all the way up, I was one of the fastest kids. And so I followed that path because my father, he loved track and field, and he thought that he knew that it would help me go further in life, could help me get an education. So I always kind of embraced that and helped me do that.
So did you start running like track and cross country when you were how old?
I started fifth, sixth grade.
Wow.
And I think I had my first pair of track spikes when I was in the sixth grade. They were size 3 men's. I was little.
Wow.
I was like 4'9" and 70 pounds.
Man, you started several years before
real young, and very.
And your dad was the one that encouraged you to do that?
Dad. My father was a custodian, and my mom was a waitress in a really small town. Mostly, it was a farming community, and Dad didn't finish high school. Mom had a GED. Dad always thought it would be in a better place if I could go to college. I wasn't a very good student, so I wasn't going to get an academic scholarship. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And he didn't really understand what it meant, but he always thought you could. His hero at that time, or he followed really closely, was Jim Ryan, who was from Wichita, Kansas.
Yeah.
Fastest miler at the time and everything.
Right.
And first high school senior to run under 4 minutes for the mile.
Yeah, that's still
in like 1963.
I know, that's still hard to believe.
Still hard to believe. And he went to the Olympics before his senior year. After his junior year, between the junior
in
and
high
senior,
school.
In high school, he went to the Olympics.
I didn't remember that.
Yeah, he made 3 Olympic teams. But he's from Wichita, which was 60 miles away. And Jim went to KU, and KU took care of him, helping get an education. And my father saw that. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm no Jim Ryan. So anyway, but he saw there was an opportunity for that. And he knew that they were not going to have the means for me to go there, not on the salary of a small school custodian. And so he always encouraged me. My father was a pretty good runner in his day. I think I still have one of his trophies from 1929 when he was a high point man at the track meet. So it's a little silver cup, says high point man. He got second in the 100, won the 220, and won the 880. So I still have that little sterling silver.
That's quite
cup.
a span, right?
Yeah.
You know, going from the 100 to the 880.
Yeah, it was too close between the 200 and the 400. So he ran the 880 and won it. And I think in 1929 he'd been 17, and he went to about his sophomore year in high school, and that was where his education ended. And I think he said that I think he ran a 2:04 half mile back in that time, which is pretty respectable,
especially if you're running a 100-yard dash.
Right. So, but farm labor, oil field work, and that's where he ended up at, and so never had the opportunity to pursue that. And I think he thought it was an opportunity for me, and it did get me to college. So I ended up at Fort Hays State. We ended up our senior in high school, a teammate. We formed a cross country team. So we were at Pratt Skyline High School, small school, again, 35 kids. First year we had cross country. We had the two best runners in our classes, Lonnie G and myself, and we went first and second at state, and we won the team title. So I think it's the only state championship that school's ever had for the boys. And so that was fall of 1975. So it's
crazy.
46 years ago. Anyway.
Yeah.
And ended up at Fort Hays and ran at Fort Hays.
Did Lonnie go to Fort Hays? So Lonnie this is one of your longtime friends that I've come to know here over the last few years.
Yeah.
And he ran at Fort Hays too.
And he
Were
ran
you guys
Fort
both
Hays
the same age?
Same age, graduated together.
Okay.
And
tell us what your times were in high school, just for those who heard track.
Yeah,
nerds.
My best time in high school for the 2 mile at that time, which now they call it the 3200.
Right.
So it's 10:03 was my best 2 mile time, which converts to a 9:59 3200. So I was anyway. And then my best mile time was 4:37.
Okay.
Lonnie was 4:26 for the mile or something like that, and he ran 9:33 for 2 miles. So he was better in high school than I was, and I think we matched up a little bit better, and I beat him quite a few times in college.
Yeah.
So
So Fort Hays, you did cross country and track as well.
Fort Hays did cross country, indoor and outdoor track, and
this was was this an NAIA school when you were there?
They were NAIA school. Now they're NCAA Division II.
Okay.
And so it's all the same schools like Pittsburgh State, Emporia State, Fort Hays. All those schools went to Division II, Northwest Missouri. Those types of schools are all NCAA Division II schools. So I was fortunate enough. I made All-American 3 times. I was a cross-country All-American, indoor All-American, and an outdoor All-American. And there's only 8 athletes from Fort Hays that have ever been All-American in all 3 of those sports.
Wow.
So I'm one of the 8, and
That's cool.
They haven't had one recently. We had a fantastic coach. His name was Alex Francis. He was an Olympic coach in 1968.
Yeah.
And they also asked him to be the coach in 72, but he opted out of that. But he had some fantastic runners in his days. He was at Fort Hays for 34 years, had something like 140 some All-Americans in his years.
Wow.
So my senior year was he turned 70 my senior year and had to retire after that.
Okay.
So
very cool.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So tell us what your times were in college.
Let me see. My 1500 meter time was 3:54. My 5,000 meter time was about 14:40 something. Ran like a 1:54 800 relay carry one time in a 4x8. I ran faster after college because I kept pursuing it.
Yeah.
Trying
what was
to
your
make
mile
Olympic trials.
in college?
That would convert to about we didn't run the mile, mostly ran the 1500. So we'd be mostly a conversion. I think it's 4:10, 4:11 would be what the conversion would be.
Yeah.
I ended up running right about 4:05 after college, which is still really a long ways from 4 minutes. It's still a long ways.
So fast.
Yeah.
My fastest high school mile was 4:35, and then I never ran it again.
Oh yeah.
So, I was, I became a road runner, so I was running 5Ks, 10Ks, and marathons, and yeah.
We always get to have track chats when we're out, right. We'll always talk about old times.
I love it because it was it was such a great sport for me, and I always loved the people that I met through the sport and that kind of thing. Great. I mean, anytime you get even, I don't know, 4:05 that's a fast time. I've shared with you how when I was at Baylor, one of my close friends was a scholarship cross country and track guy, and so I started training typically in the off season with some of the guys on the track team. My really close friend was really close friends with Todd Harbour, and Todd is now the head track coach of Baylor, but you ended up running across him. He ended up, I think his senior year, still collegiate qualified, ended up in a race over in Oslo with Ovett and Co. in the race. And he took like 6th or 7th in the race, and I think he ran 350 point something.
Yeah, or might have been just under 350. I mean, he was very accomplished,
and I think it's still like the 5th fastest American mile that's ever run, and I think it's still the collegiate mile record.
Might be.
I'm not 100% sure on that, but at any rate, you ran across him, like you ended up racing against him a few times, right?
I was in Dallas for the Flagpole 5 mile, which was on the 4th of July in probably 1983 or 82, somewhere in that time frame. And he had just come back from Europe, and I think it was a 5 mile race, and I think with 1 mile to go, I was sitting in 4th place behind some other really good runners and everything. I was sitting in 4th place, and there was a guy behind me, and I think he was eight seconds behind me, and he beat me by 4 seconds, and I ran a 4:31 last mile.
Gosh.
So do the math. He did 8, 4, 12. So he did a 4:18, 4:19 last mile.
Wow.
And we got to run and cool down together afterwards, and that's how we got to comparing what our splits were.
Interesting.
And so he was definitely a talent. So.
Yeah, definitely. So you kind of pursued running after college. Like, describe that a little bit for people, because were you kind of on a semi-pro type deal, or what would you call that?
Well, I think that when we were when I was at Fort Hays, they'd had some really good runners. A man by the name of John Mason, who had broke the 4-minute mile 32 times when he was at Fort Hays, and he was an alternate on the 72 Olympic team and one of the fastest milers in the world at that time. Beat Kip Kano, who was an Olympic champion in some races and stuff. And so he went on afterwards. And I think that inspired a lot of us to continue running after college, to go, can we go to Europe? Can we travel? Can we make Olympic trials and things? And I had some other teammates, a guy named Fred Tornaden that had ran 2:11 for the marathon. 2:11 is not so fast now, but at that time the world record was like 2:08,
right.
2:07. So he was a year ahead of me. So he inspired us to keep chasing that dream a little bit. How fast can we run? And and at that time Nike was pouring money into the sport, and I mean a lot of the big shoe companies, Reebok, were pouring money into the sport. So I was able to get my equipment provided. Usually could have the gear and shoes and all that sort of stuff, and sometimes travel money. And we had a group out of Wichita that put some teams together and supported us to get our travel taken care of so we could go to the larger meets and things like that. So it was
That's cool.
And my goal was always to try and make the Olympic trials. I never thought I'd make the Olympics. I just want to make the trials.
Right.
I fell about 8 seconds short in the 5,000, but it's okay.
So how did you get into cycling?
I think mostly I ran until I was about 34, but I was started to become injury plagued, and as most runners do, they get enough miles on, enough hard miles, you start having injury problems, and I still like to compete, and off and on when I was running, I do a little bit of cycling. I always had a bicycle, it seemed like. So once I got to where I couldn't run anymore, I decided I'm just going to start riding. And so I started mixing in with race groups and started racing. So that's kind of, I think it was just I just pivoted, just shifted gears from competing as a runner to competing as a cyclist.
Yeah.
So,
what year did you start cycling competitively?
I think the first year I licensed with USA Cycling to become a racer was 91.
Wow.
So 30 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, 91,
That's crazy.
92. Yeah.
You've basically been competing your whole life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Since the 5th or 6th grade, right?
For some reason, always kind of, I'm kind of wired that way.
You think about that. There's not that many people out there that do that.
Yeah, a lot of people are smarter.
Yeah, I think there's something wrong with us, Curt.
No, definitely.
But see, I'm still around you, so I still think I'm normal, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, it is perfectly normal within our group. Yes. That's funny.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. So, wow. So how did you, let's talk about Paceline and Chamois Buttr. How did you get into, I know you've kind of, I don't want to go into all your career history, but I do want to get to the Chamois Buttr Paceline stuff. How did you connect with that? And describe to the people what that company is.
Sure.
And
the quick entry to that was I'd been in corporate wellness and fitness, and I was contracted to the Boeing company in Wichita. And then after 9/11 and some things like that, aircraft took a big hit. They ended up selling part of the plant off, and I was contracted, so I was looking for a job. And I had helped the owner of Paceline Products and founder of it, Steve Matthews, right here in Liberty, Missouri area, Kansas City area. He needed help at the national trade show, and I just happened to be available. So for 2 or 3 years, I'd gone along to that trade show with Steve, took time off from work, my contract job at Boeing, and would go to Vegas for a week and help at a trade show. A lot of really hard work, but it gave me an in, and I figured out what the company was doing. At that time, it was very small. Steve had himself and a part-time person working, and that was it. Small. I think they were mostly working out of a machine shed on his property.
Okay.
And as the company grew a little bit, got bigger, the brand Chamois Buttr became a little bit larger. And finally, about the time my contract and my position ended when I was at Boeing, went to Interbike, and Steve says, I think we're getting big enough. I'm going to need some help. And I said, well, that's good because I'm going to need a job. And so I came up and visited. This would have been fall of 2005. And I came up and visited, thought like it was the best option I had on the table, being that was the only option I had on the table at that time, because everything's a little bit tight and everything. So I started with Paceline in November 1 of 2005. Wow. It was my first day of work there.
Wow.
Now, and at that time there was a part-time person, Steve, and then I was the first full-time employee of the company. Yeah. And we were in a small warehouse at that time, and it's a family-owned business. Steve and his wife Mitzi, she was a physician, and the company just, I think, out of pure stubbornness, some years, I think Steve kept it moving and kept it alive, and 20 years later, it became a success. And so, that's what we always joke about.
So let's try to describe this for our non-cycling friends that are listening here, right? So our cycling buddies are going to track with this, and maybe we can post this on Chamois Buttr site and that kind of thing too. But so Paceline is distributes all kinds of cycling products. Is that right?
Yes, we don't do as many as we used to. When I started with the company in 2005, we probably distributed 15 other brands. We would buy other products and we'd sell them to bike shops. And we've in that time, Chamois Buttr was smaller, but as it's grown, we've done some good marketing and it's become more popular. We don't put as much emphasis on distributing those other brands. So we distribute 4 or 5 other brands, but mostly 70 to 80% of what we do is our product, just chamois butter right now.
Yeah. So tell people what chamois butter is. That's what people I always tell people. I ride for chamois butter, and then they're going like, "What's chamois butter?" Right?
Chamois butter. Yeah. Well, it's chamois butter. The original formula has been out for 30 years. It's 30 years old. Steve started 30 years ago, and what chamois butter is, it's a skin lubricant. It's, you know how small bike seats are, like you're very well aware of how small bike seats are. And in cycling shorts, there's a thing called a chamois or a chamois pad. And you get a little bit of abrasion, or you can get some friction build up, or you can get some chafing. And so chamois butter is a skin lubricant that helps prevent that, prevent from getting chafing. And all chafing is injuring your skin. So chamois butter helps prevent injuring that region of your body, what contacts your seat. So it's a butt cream.
Yeah.
And so
I always say it's butt butter. Yeah.
It's butt butter, which is a good slang term for it. And we have 4 formulas of it, depending upon what each person likes and dislikes, so to speak. So we have original formula, and like I said, it's been out right at 30 years now. So
wow. And like when I go cycling anywhere like I can be in Colorado, I can be in another state, I can be down in Sedona mountain biking. When people see my chamois butter outfit, my kit, as we call our cycling clothes, the purple and yellow, right? If they're cyclists, they'll go, "Hey, chamois butter," like I use you, whatever. I mean, how many cycling shops is chamois butter in?
Well, it's give or take, they believe there's around 5,000 independent bicycle shops in the United States. And we're in probably almost every one of them.
Yeah. So think about it. So you could go to any bicycle shop anywhere in America, and you'll see our purple and yellow chamois butter.
You'll see the
cream.
Tubes. You'll see the tubes hanging there.
Yeah.
Or it'll be an REI or Shields. And there's a lot of online retailers as well.
Okay.
So,
and then what about in the European market?
Well, we're in about 33 countries now.
Wow.
I think when I started, we were in Canada and the U.S. And now we're into 33 countries. We have, and I think we're still working to get into our 2 latest are France and Germany. But you would think we'd be in France, but anyway. So but we're in Australia and South Korea and United Kingdom and South Africa and Brazil and Colombia and Norway and Belgium, so and Denmark, so Poland. So we just Luxembourg and
that's great.
Dubai, which is really strange. I just had to get some documents over to Dubai this morning. So,
wow.
But
I was in Dubai in 2018 for a short period of time. But and then what about, at one time you tried to cross over into the motorcycle world? What happened with that?
Well, we knew quite a few or several motorcycle shops would also carry our product, because enduro riders would experience chafing a little bit. So some would use it, and they were saying, we got some recommendations. Hey, change the label. Make it look a little more motorcycly rather than purple and yellow. So we went with kind of a black and red and white label and named it Butt Wax. And it just never really quite took off. I think the difference is, like, motorcyclists will use it on really long, extended endurance type rides, but a bicyclist will use it almost every ride. So there's a difference between how often it's needed. And we still find motorcyclists use our product as well as equestrian riders. And my wife's into horse, so a lot of the endurance trail riders use our product and swear by it. So it's pretty interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
We're not available in Tractor Supply yet, but we're getting there.
Yeah, John Deere, and we go green, yellow, purple. Yeah, we'd really do it up, wouldn't we? Well, let's talk a little bit about sort of the cycling world and spirituality and a little bit like that. Maybe just for for folks, tell us a little bit about your spiritual journey. What are you comfortable sharing on that side of thing?
Well, I always struggled. When I was little, we'd go to a church and it was all fire and brimstone, and and I just thought I'm never going to make this because I'm dead already. I can't. I'll never. Seemed like there was I didn't understand grace or forgiveness, and I thought every mistake meant I'm just paving the road to hell right here because I'm not going to be able to do this.
Right.
And so. And that was kind of, I don't know, 1950s, 60s, 70s churches and things like that. Were a really strong Catholic community that I grew up in. Didn't go to a Catholic church, but so I always struggled with that. And I think when I went to Vineyard, and I hadn't gone to church for years and years and years. And so when my wife Stacy and I moved to Kansas City area, we started attending the Vineyard Church because I heard the guy that was the pastor there rode a bike. And so, and turned out we'd actually race them against each other even prior to that.
That was funny.
I still have a wheel to prove it. So, but,
we got to explain that real quick.
Yeah. But,
no, it's serious.
Yeah.
Stop and explain that just real quick.
Well, Fred and I were in a race in Overland Park area one time. Corporate Woods, I believe, is where it was.
I think it was.
We're in a criterium, which is
in the Kansas State Championships,
I think
right?
it was. Yeah. And so it's a very tightly packed, tightly competitive group.
I was on the Cowtown team, I think, at the time. This would have been do you remember what year this would have been?
This probably would have been about it's been about probably 04.
Okay. Yeah.
03, 04 time.
03, 04. Okay.
Yeah. And I think we were in the criterium. We're coming in top of that last hill, getting ready to the last corner, and we've probably got a couple laps to go. And I don't know, the pack always moves and flows and shrinks or spreads out and shrinks back.
And there might have been 100 guys in this race, and we're all racing field. Inches apart. And,
I think we just kind of found ourselves both in the same place at the same time. And my front wheel got into your rear skewer on your bike and started pinging spokes. And so it put a bend in one of the spokes. And we just came across that wheel the other day. I still have it. It's actually in my office, and I had to point it out to you that it still has the bent spoke. We almost
crashed each other out.
Yeah.
And you've said many times it was my fault, right? I wasn't sticking on my line. I was kind of breaking to the outside to try to get around the pack and do some points or something.
Yeah. In cycling, it's always someone else's fault. And of course, the thing is, I was behind you, so it was really my fault, really. But I think you moved a little bit abruptly one time, so that's probably what did it. Because I was under total control.
That's right. Yeah, but we didn't know each other, and we didn't figure that out until after we were riding together some.
Yeah.
And so I think then we would have met when you moved to Kansas City. How did we connect when you got to Kansas City?
I think that's when a friend of mine, Greg Reed, and I knew your name and we and stuff like that, and I think we determined that at the Vineyard, which Stacy, when we moved to Kansas City, we lived in Smithville, which is about 2 miles from the Vineyard. And so we decided we wanted to go to the Vineyard and check it out. And I felt like I wanted to be more involved with a church in some way. And I thought, well, I think I can relate to Fred.
Yeah.
And so, cause he rides a bike and I need to know people that ride bikes around here. So I think that's when we first, right after we went, we sat in top 3 or 4 rows up on the right side that we'd always sit on. And afterwards I went up and approached you afterwards, and then we got to talking and we started going for bike rides together.
Yeah. And,
you took me out with Ed and Mike and we went on one of those rides. And
oh, yeah.
There was some colorful language.
Yeah, right. That was the Ed Knoll. I can remember that first ride. Yeah. I remember Anyway.
Yeah.
Ed was always a colorful person to ride bikes with.
Ed was always
provided color commentary on all of our rides.
Yes, indeed. But, no one was ever going to mess with us when Ed was along.
That's right.
Because he was going to take care of
That's right. Yeah. I thought, when you're fully tatted, arms, legs everywhere, and you're in spandex, that's about the only way that you really look cool in spandex, I think. Is or look tough.
Right.
Yeah, you look tough. Otherwise, you're
it's pretty hard to look tough in some of the costumes that we're wearing. So, but
I remember one time, Scott Rogers, Ben Bolin, myself, I can't remember who else was with us. Maybe Dave Hudson, maybe another person. Well, we were mountain biking in Sedona. So Tim Place, Grizz never went with us on that one. But anyway, we were in Sedona and we were coming through this sort of touristy spot, still on single track, but in a place where people walked. And we went, I think 4 of us went by in our Chamois Buttr kits, yellow and purple. And this lady goes, "Oh, look, costumes."
That's right.
we were just flying by and I heard this lady, "Oh, look, costumes."
Looked like a parade.
Yeah. It's like, it's Halloween.
Yeah, that's right. It is. It could pass sometimes, I think. Yes.
That's funny. Okay. So we probably started riding in 2005. And then what year did you get the Chamois Buttr team going?
We toyed around, finally got it started probably about 2007.
Okay.
Maybe 2008.
Yeah.
The biggest, strongest present when we started getting associated with the Dirty Kanza and doing, 2011, 2010, 11, we kind of started, more and more people entered the sport and wanted to do stuff with the gravel and everything. That's when it became stronger. So,
and Dirty Kanza, let's chat just a little bit about that. Because you guys were one of the early sponsors of Dirty Kanza, is that right?
Right.
And it started in what year? 2010 maybe or something?
No, I believe it actually started in 06.
06, okay.
I believe.
And 25, 30 guys or gals show
34 people entered that first year. And
did you do it that first year? Okay.
My very first year was 2011. We always thought about doing it, but I just really couldn't picture much desire to go do 200 miles on gravel roads in one day. And
I know.
In June in central Kansas.
In the Flint Hills, right?
But
was it Jim
Cummins?
Jim Cummins who started that first 34 people?
Yeah, Jim Cummins and Joel Dyke.
Okay.
And Joel has since passed away about 6-7 years ago, had a home accident and died. But he and Jim kind of had the brainchild to put it together and make it a real epic, not just 100 miles, but let's make it 200 miles. And let's make it so you have to navigate yourself. You have to follow a map and all that. And I think they set it up where the first year one would ride one year and the other would direct, and then they'd flip positions the next year. If Joel rode the first year, Jim would direct the race. The next year, Joel would direct it and Jim would ride it, because they were kind of doing it because that's what they wanted to do. And then it grew from 34 people to, I think in 2011, the first year we did it, they had 350 people, and now it's 3,000 people participate in the whole adventure. The weekend.
Try to describe this to people. So this was early on gravel racing when a lot of people weren't doing gravel racing, right? When he started this thing in 2006. Now in the cycling world, gravel racing has become a rage. I mean, everywhere, all over the United States, people are sponsoring gravel races all over, but this was one of the first ones. I know that as it gained in popularity, we drew in. I remember one year racing against Chris Carmichael, who was Lance Armstrong's coach. Yeah. I remember one year Jens Voigt was in the race, who was a 20-time Tour de France guy, right, from Germany.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've had huge names get in this tour, and some of the guys that did the Tour de France, some of the guys that did the one-day European Classic stage races, and then have ridden Dirty Kanza, and they were trying to say, like there's this whole thing about what's the toughest one-day race in the world, right?
Yeah.
What was the conclusion of some of these guys that have done them all?
Most of them thought that the Dirty Kanza was the
toughest one-day race in the world.
Just because it's so self-supporting, in larger pro races in Europe, I mean, they have a caravan of cars behind them. They don't have to worry about mechanicals. They get handed a new bike, or the mechanic hands them a new set of wheels. It's all taken care of. DK, you're between your checkpoints. You're 50 miles between checkpoints. You're self-supporting. You can't get help. You got to make sure you carry everything that you're going to need, or fix it yourself, or bum it off somebody else that happens to ride by and feels generous enough to let you have whatever it is that you need, a spare tube or something like that. So, it makes it really tough.
Yeah, I mean, you're literally carrying all your water, all of your food, all of your tools that you need to fix your bike if you break down. It's like crazy.
Yeah.
And you guys started sponsoring this race in 2011.
Right.
And then you've been a sponsor every year since. Is that right?
Yeah.
And so you've finished it how many times? I'm just curious.
I've got I finished the 209 times. I'm 9 for 9. So
9 for 9.
Yeah. So
I've ridden it 4 times and finished it 3.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And the first time I
thought you had more than that for some reason.
No.
Yeah.
I rode it 4 and finished it 3. I trained for it more. I even trained for it, but there was like one time I've had a couple of times where I got sick or injured or whatever, and didn't end up being able to compete after I'd trained.
Yeah, just to not get sick or not have a mechanical or not or eat incorrectly or whatever. Just the training it takes to get to that point.
Yeah, the first time I tried it, I crashed twice down onto my same shoulder.
That's right.
Wound up, I made it like I was almost riding one-handed for about 70 miles and pulled out at the 105 mile mark. Wound up in the
went to the hospital.
And went to the hospital and wound up on some drugs that knocked me silly. And
I think there's some video out there somewhere.
I entertained everybody the rest of the day, I think. The first time I finished it was whichever year it was, which was all the mud.
Okay.
Like the year that
2015, I think is.
Yeah, we were crossing creeks that were up to our crotch,
Yeah.
We were hiking our bikes. Like we had to pick our bikes up. You could not ride through this stuff. It was so muddy in sections that we were hiking miles.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally miles with mud clumped up onto our feet. It was like this clay, it's like your feet become like lead bricks, when you're trying to hike.
Or clown shoes.
Yeah, and you're trying to hike your bike through this stuff.
Yeah. You can't roll the bike. At those B roads, the clay it sticks so much. You can't even roll the bike. You have to carry the bike.
It was crazy. So, I started at 6 a.m. and I finished by 10:30 p.m.
Okay.
The first time. Yeah. So it was like a 16-hour ride for me.
Yeah.
I finished,
Our first finish, I did it with my son, 2011. We decided we rode the whole thing together. And it took us 17 hours and 40 minutes, I think. And it was the year that started off dry, got it to 100 degrees, and then it started raining, and it rained and hailed and everything else on us. Then we had to do, I think from like 130 to 140 miles, we were carrying bikes because it got so muddy. And that's not a good time. I mean, if you're going to carry the bike, do it early in the day. Right. But when you start doing it after you've ridden 130 miles already, now you've got to carry this mud-covered, now it's a 35-pound bicycle, and you're carrying it, and you're already kind of whacked. And so, but we finished it that day, and it was a good day.
It's a tough
good day
race. Yeah. But you've podiumed a few times, right?
Won my age group a few times.
Yeah.
Can about always make the podium. I think I've won my age group 3 times, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe 4. Yeah. I can't remember for sure.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
That's with a big field and lots of good riders. So
it's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about cycling community as it relates to spirituality. I was thinking of spirituality. I always say it, I like to think of it as connection or belonging to yourself, to others, and then to something greater than yourself that's loving and caring. And so when for me, cycling has spiritual comkomponents for me. And I'm not saying all cyclists think of it that way,
right.
But maybe as we talk about this and describe it, I think many cyclists will relate to some of these ideas, you know, and for those who are not cyclists, one of the things that, because people know I cycle, and I'm sure this happens to you all the time. We constantly get people asking us about how to get into cycling, right?
Right.
So maybe this is for people who are thinking about getting into cycling as well. Yeah. And we love the sport. We love even the recreational side of it. So we're always encouraging people to get into cyclists, right? But yeah, let's talk a little, like for you, is there a spiritual component to your cycling experience?
I think it connects you. Now, it connects you with being outdoors, and outdoors is a greater thing. And I'm always uncertain on really what that exactly means sometimes. And so the story that I can relate to the most is, and it's a DK experience for me, a Dirty Cons experience, which now we keep calling it DK. It's now called Unbound.
Right.
So just get that. But anyway, almost every year that I've done it, as I come into the 3rd checkpoint, which the checkpoints are usually about 50 miles apart. So it's 150 miles in or thereabouts. And every time I'm coming in, and usually you're riding alone by then, and that's when I probably have what I call my greatest spiritual connection. And it's my dad always shows up. And I don't think I've ever told you this.
I don't think you have.
No, I don't think I've ever told you this.
Interesting.
But my father passed in 91. And so in 1991, and he was always supporting him, but Dad shows up, and I don't know why. I'll be riding along, and I can feel him. And I don't know what it is, and it gets weird because or strange, and I get even now I kind of start to get a little bit, I well up just a little bit, because it's like I can feel Dad there. I'm coming to the checkpoint, and I'm almost in tears sometimes, because you're emotionally stripped away,
right?
You're on the verge of exhaustion. You're dehydrated. You're hungry. Your blood sugar's low. You're in your head the whole day with just yourself, and you're out in a greater expanse of something, the Flint Hills. You're out there by yourself, and it's all on you, and you're coming to the checkpoint, and that's where my wife is, and other friends, and people that have pulled out for the day, and they're all there encouraging you. They're all willing you to be successful. So there's that energy there too. But, and it's not that I just feel my father's presence because he was always supportive. So it's like going, I know I'm okay. I know I'm good. I know that I will go forward and get this done. I guess maybe he provides that stubbornness that I have, that I won't usually give up.
Right.
I'm pretty stubborn. And I think that's probably my greatest, where I think there's something spiritual about it, is in that experience that I have.
That's interesting. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. Well, a funny thing too, I remember one year the very first year my son and I did, I don't think I've told this one to you either. And we were riding along, we'd left the 2nd checkpoint, and it's just hot. And one of Colin's water bottles popped out. He happened to be in front of me, and I ran over it. Well, and it was a full water bottle. And you don't want to be without a full water bottle. And so it's like, so as we're riding along, and you don't go by many houses. I mean, there's no houses out there, literally no houses out there. And he's getting low on water, and we're still 35 miles from the next checkpoint, and it's hot. It's 100 degrees. And so I sit here and go, well, something will come along. We'll figure something out. There's no potable water, like that. And all of a sudden a farmhouse appears. And this is it's a weird coincidence, or is it a spiritual thing? I'd been down this road. I didn't recall there were any farmhouses because I've ridden the Flint Hills a lot. I go, wow. So we pull in, there's a hydrant. We fill up with water, and we're on our merry way. And that's when I pulled my phone out, and there was a text from Fred that said, "Good luck today, guys. Hope you have a great ride." And you texted me that morning, but I hadn't seen it till we're at that farmhouse. So I was like going, wow, that's kind of like
interesting.
It was a weird thing. It was a moment of you affirmed or something.
Yeah.
I don't really know how to describe that. But
that's interesting.
So I've had those things
Very
around
cool.
the DK because I don't know why it is. It's because it's when you're out there challenging yourself and you're in your own head in a greater space.
Yeah.
And you're trying to figure things out.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? I've had so many experiences. I think a lot of ultra endurance athletes, when they get into those long hauls and they're in their head, and there's something spiritual that happens in almost all of those people. No matter what they believe, it doesn't matter really what background they're from spiritually, but it's like there's something that goes on in those kind of moments. That's really fascinating. One of the things I've loved about cycling is just the cyclists themselves and the community, the friendships. And I think when we're supporting each other, and think about, when we're down, I mean, when I've gone through what I've gone through the last a couple of years, it's been some of the cycling guys that have been with me, that have supported me, that have really emotionally, sort of carried me through some of this time. You've been one of those people for me, and I appreciate it so much. But so for me, community, that connection to other people, when we're there for each other in the difficult times and in the good times, when we're fun, when we're telling stupid stories and jokes and all of those things that happen together in community. But, but there really is something that happens when we're there for each other. And the cycle community, I've just found to be super good, supportive kinds of people once you really build relationships there.
No, I agree 100%. I mean, it's a small community. I mean, there are millions of bicycle riders, but there's, it's pale in comparison to some of the other communities, like the soccer communities or whatever else might be, the automotive industry communities, so like that.
Right.
But people they look out for each other, they take care of each other, and there's always moments, but how many times we're on a ride and we see someone stopped alongside the road with their bike. We don't know who they are, but we always offer. Or if we're stopped alongside the road, we don't know who they are, but they always offer. Yeah, it's because there's that caring, that community, the connection. Right. And I agree, and I think, I go back through most of my friends. They're all my running mates or my cycling friends. They all. I connect in that way, and it's someone you can count on. We mentioned Lonnie G. Earlier in this conversation, and we talk twice a week. We've been friends since freshman high school. Yeah, So we talk 2 times a week.
Yeah, that's good stuff. The other thing I think about in terms of cycling and spirituality is the mental health, physical health component to it, and for me, it's like therapy for me. Yeah. I mean, there's a mental health side to these longer endurance kinds of activities that I don't know. Like if I don't get rides in, I can actually start getting depressed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like crazy, but it's like it actually plays into my sense of well-being and my mental health. If I'm not out in nature, not out getting, some endorphins from the cycling and the exercise, I tend to not end up getting in, weird headspaces,
Yeah. I don't sleep well. If I don't get something, if I go 3-4 days and I've not had some release, and also I solve problems because everything else gets out of your head. So it allows a solution to come into your head, I guess, because you can sit there and focus on a problem at work or focus on some production thing we've got going on. As long as you're sitting there, keep pounding on the same nail, you just never can get it. But you go out for a ride, we banter around, we tell a few jokes, and all of a sudden, it'll free up the mind. It lets all the other stuff come out of the mind, so you can find solutions and also find yourself in your own space. So
I'm there with I work out so many things on a ride many times. So so for me, there's this prayer component. There's that problem solving. There's that connection with myself, and I've worked out a lot. It
helps with exercise. It helps with you maintaining weight, keeping blood sugar, keeping the heart rate up, and getting the aerobic base. I mean, it just helps in a lot of different ways. But I think it's the mental clarity that's probably the greatest thing you get out of being outdoors and exercising, whether you're on a bike or you're walking or even, my wife rides a horse, and that in itself is its own type of exercise of doing that. So,
good stuff. I strongly recommend like nature outdoor activities for people. Like you say, whether it's walking or running or hiking, whether, we love cycling. Talk a little bit about how you've encouraged cyclists through the NICA program.
Well, NICA stands for the National Interscholastic Cycling Association. So NICA is based out of they're a national 501c3 organization. They're out of California, is where their office is. And that's where they were started. NICA now has about 30 leagues in 30 states. 30 leagues in 29 states, because California has 2 leagues. And so it's been around for 10, 11 years, 13 years. So we recently just started a league. Well, recently we started about 3.5 to 4 years ago, worked with Leland Danes to start forming the Kansas NICA League. And so what that is, it's all about, I should be able to remember the 5 pillars, but it's community and respect, equality, fun, and there's the 5th one I can picture it, but I can't get there. But it's all about getting kids on bikes, 6th grade through 12th grade kids, and having coaches, having adults interact with them, men, women, whatever. So usually the ratio is about 2 adults to every 4 to 6 kids. And then I think we have something like 30,000 kids involved in the sport on the national level. And there's about 15,000 coaches. Okay. So it's very adult intensive. Most of the events they have camping that goes with the event. I mean, they come out on the Saturday, they camp, the course gets set up, they camp, they race the next day. And it's not about who wins or anything like that. I mean, we do have winners, but it's about getting the kids involved and having them on bikes. Yeah. They have to do weekly practices and things like that. So, but in Kansas, we had this last year, we had 4 events. We're a spring season. So we had 4 events and about 100 kids involved and about 60 coaches. And so we have 8 teams. I think we're just adding a 9th or 10th team for next year. And but if you look up, if someone wants to go look up NICA and in Kansas, we're a nonprofit. So we're always looking, I think we raised about a little over $200,000 last year, the last couple of years to get the league launched, to be able to buy the equipment. We have a trailer, and I'm race operations, so I'm the one that goes out and sets up the course and hauls all the equipment and stuff like that. Yeah. So, but to see the kids, I mean, we see 6th grade on up and boys and girls, and it's such a positive experience. And they're on a bike. That's cool. That's what's important. So
that's cool. I was mountain biking last week, me and Scott Rogers, and we bumped into Joe Fox, who owns Cycle City, and I did an interview with Joe several months back in the spring, but I think he had a whole group of young kids out. And I think it was connected to Nike. Is that right or not?
Could be.
Is that a different? Maybe that's just a Cycle City thing.
Yeah, or maybe Now there are some other programs being, I think, Specialized is trying to get some programs going too, to feed into that. Now he might be associated with the Missouri NICA.
Okay,
it might be because he's on the Missouri side. But
he seemed like he said NICA to me, but I could be, I could be remembering wrong. But no, but he had. I bet you they had 6, 7, 8 kids on mountain bikes. And it was pretty cool. Yeah,
it takes, kids can't participate unless we have an adult. They have to go under a coach. Yeah. And if they don't have a coach, they can't come to races, and the coach has to be an adult. And we actually have this October, the second weekend in October is our Leaders Summit, which is where we do coaches training. And so we're always looking for more coaches. So you don't have to be a great bicycle. We teach you on the bike skills, teach you how to teach the kids. It's a very neat organization. So, yeah.
I just typed in NICA cycling in the Google. Yeah. And it came up, right? Yeah, it came up instantly. Yeah. There's a lot of NICA abbreviations, but if you put NICA cycling, it pops right up.
Yeah, if you put NICA or put cycling or put MTB, because it's mountain biking. They don't do road riding or anything like that. It's all about safety for the kids. The mountain bike courses are all pretty tame courses, but we make them so the 6th grade child can be just as successful as the 12th grade really fast athlete. Okay. In fact, like 2 NICA kids out of Colorado participated in the Tour de France last year.
Which 2?
Sepp Kuss. Yeah. And
they're calling him the Durango Kid these days, right?
And then there was another kid, and I just blanked on the kid's name. I think he did it the year before. Okay. But Sepp won a stage of the Tour de France this last year. Yeah. Or this year. Yeah, this year. And he was a NICA kid out of Durango.
I'll be dang.
He went through NICA, Colorado.
That's cool.
So, pretty cool.
Awesome. Yeah, and then if people wanted to get chamois butter, how would they do that?
Yeah. Well, you can get it in almost every bike shop. Just start off with, we have a retailer locator on our website, and a place to start is just go chamoisbuttr.com, and it's it sounds like chamois, SHAMMY, but anyway, it's spelled chamois, CHAMOISBUTTR.com. And it's available on Amazon through a lot of different retailers as well. That's probably one of the best places to do it. We do sell direct through our website. And so, but you can find, if you could just Google chamois butter, there's a lot of places to get there. Yeah.
All right. And then if somebody's like going, I'd like to get my kid involved in this NICA thing, how would they do that?
We're on Facebook. It'd be the Kansas MTB, or you can even go to the NICA page, and then there's a state. Each state will have its own link to go to the state, and then there's emails to send to our league director, which is Tina Kahn, and she's out of Emporia is where she's at. So, and there's, it's on Facebook, it's on Instagram, NICA Kansas, or Kansas NICA, or Kansas MTB. If you Google around a little bit, it's pretty easy to find. So
cool. Yeah. Well, I always tell people, because most everybody knows I cycle, right? And they're always, every time they see a cyclist on the road, first of all, we're going to wrap it up here, but first of all, I always like to say, be nice to bicycles when you're driving your vehicles, because literally we get the craziest things happen, don't we? We literally have people in their vehicles who almost try to run us off the road, flipping us off. There's like, people don't want bicycles on the road. So my challenge is always be nice to cyclists. Remember, Jesus wants you to love even your enemies. So like, even if you think we're your enemy because we're on the road, just be nice, love us anyway. And the other thing that I want to say is that people are always saying, I think I saw you out there. And I always say, well, if it was purple and yellow, it was either me or one of my teammates, right? Yeah. And so there's just so then figure out how to do a nice wave and a nice honk and give and support us as you see us on the road, because we love to ride together, and I'm just thankful I can still ride at 60.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I hear you.
So.
I got a few years on you, and I'm just thankful to be riding. So
you're the person that keeps me going.
Yeah.
You're leading the way. All right. Well, thank you, Curt, so much for joining us, and appreciate your time to take for this interview. And we want to encourage everybody to get involved in cycling if you don't have another sport that's already doing that for you. And thanks for tuning in to Spirituality Adventures, and we will see you next time. This concludes today's episode. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Remember, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Remember to like, share, or subscribe to the social media platform that you're using. And then go to our website, spiritualityadventures.com, and make a one-time donation, or you can subscribe monthly and receive our special bonus content. Thanks so much.